You're listening to the Backroom Beer League podcast with your hosts, Jacob, Nigel, and Greg. Bringing you your fantasy sports content recorded from the back room. To stay up to date, follow us at BRBL Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and rate the podcast to show us your support. Now, here's Jacob, Nigel, and Greg to talk fantasy sports.
It is 9:23 on Monday, April 20th at the time of recording, and as always, you're listening to Jacob, Nigel, and Greg. Both this week's episode and the episodes going forward are going to be a bit different in terms of content because I think the three of us have collectively decided to shift a little bit away from the news-based content that we've kind of been providing in the last episodes up to this date to a more opinion-based topic and analysis segment about fantasy sports and also sports in general. It allows us to try new things and maybe provide a more unique point of view to talk about. And it's worth mentioning that this is actually our 10th episode. So I'd just like to say congratulations to the three of us collectively. I mean, it's a small milestone in the big scheme of things, but I mean, 10 episodes is nothing to snub your nose at, I don't think. In the next few months, hopefully, things will grow even more than they already have. I mean, we're already at like 120 followers on Instagram and 190 on Facebook or something like that. So we're doing pretty good.
The boomers enjoy us.
Yeah. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about a few things, changes to our format. Some of our favorite fantasy sports players are going to be discussed in our weekly pick segment, and some of the sports news topics are going to be condensed into the BRBL rundown segment. So before we start, we'd just like to dedicate this podcast, obviously, to the victims of the tragic events that just happened in Nova Scotia. Obviously, it's really hitting home for all of us because we're all from the Maritimes, and Nigel himself is from Nova Scotia. So from all of us here, we'd just like to say our hearts and our thoughts are with all the families that are affected by that horrible incident.
100%. Nova Scotia strong.
Yeah, man.
That's the way to be. So I think to start off, what we're going to do is we're going to do our new Backroom Beer League weekly picks segment. So all three of us have pretty much chosen a single fantasy player that we either owned or wanted to own in the last fantasy year for whatever sport we want to pick. And we're just going to take a little bit of a rundown on him and see what his stats are, how good of a prospect or a veteran or whatever kind of player he is, and how he could really help your fantasy team. And I think I'll just go first with mine. Being a big baseball guy on this podcast, I talk about baseball all the time. This guy that I chose, his name's Hanser Alberto, and this guy is an absolute batting average machine, and a lot of people don't know who he is. He's an Orioles player, so I mean that right there explains everything you need to know about him. He pretty much blew up in 2019, and he was on the Texas Rangers for probably 4 years before last year, and he hit 222, 143, 158 averages in about a 4-year span. And last year, he absolutely popped off at a 305 batting average, and he only struck out 50 times in 550 plate appearances, I believe, and he even popped 12 home runs to boot. So if you want someone in your lineup specifically for batting average, another guy that comes to mind when I'm talking about Hanser Alberto is David Fletcher on the Los Angeles Angels. Pure batting average guy, but if Hanser Alberto upped his power a little bit, I think you could easily get 15 home runs, maybe even more. He has a bit of a weak contact tendency, but he's really great in either dynasty or roto formats. It doesn't even really matter. Base hits, batting average, if you're counting those categories, he's pretty much the best kept secret in fantasy baseball, in my opinion. I mean, he's just pure hitting power, and you're almost guaranteed to have at least a hit from him in every time he steps to the plate. Like, I know you two don't play a lot of fantasy baseball, but
I want to start, but I was going to try and start this year, but this kind of Rona kind of fucked that one up.
Start, man. Like,
I agree. I'd be totally down.
Like, before I started playing fantasy baseball, like, full disclosure, I didn't even think about baseball as much as I do now, and it's like now my favorite sport. Like, I was really big into hockey. I dabbled in football. I was following basketball, as sad as it is with the Knicks. Like, I was into all the sports, and I love the Yankees and stuff too, because I was cheering for Aaron Judge and I wanted them to win the World Series and stuff like that. But playing fantasy baseball, man, it's not even comparable to the other fantasy sports I found. There's so many players and so many different things going on, so many different categories to worry about.
I'm a strong believer in that playing fantasy sports can help your knowledge of the game and make you fall in love with it more. This is this happens all the time, right? Like, people do fantasy football leagues with their friends just because they want to be involved, and then they end up loving the sport more and following it. And we saw that in our own fantasy football league this year, right? But I've considered doing fantasy baseball. I mean, I've always followed baseball. I followed it my entire life, but mainly just the Blue Jays. So I think I've always considered it. Nige, you want to go form a league or something? Leave Jake out?
No, we should definitely get a league going next. Well, maybe delayed this year, but if not next year. Same thing.
Well, I mean, I've been talking to you guys about fantasy baseball, about the shit I have to manage, and you guys
trust me, you tell me
like a part-time job.
Yeah, I know. It's we have prospects, we have a prospect draft, a free agent draft. There's so much shit going on, but my first year in fantasy baseball was last year, and it was a trial by fire. I had to learn all that shit, or else I was sinking really bad. And I inherited a pretty good team from a guy that quit the league, but still,
Juan Soto.
Yeah, I traded away Juan Soto to get Garrett Cole, so that tells you all the
Yankees homer.
How intense
that's a big yikes, dude.
Big yikes, but in our format, we have daily periods, so every single day you need a new pitcher to play games. So it's really, really it's a grind.
I guess I'll move into my player, which is anybody who knows me knows I love football. I've been playing fantasy football since I was in the 10th grade. I normally have last year was the first year I didn't have at least 2 leagues going at the same time. I only had our league. Fuck you, Diggy. But anyway, so the player I picked is at a position where it's kind of like a crapshoot. So the quarterback position in fantasy football is normally you draft them you don't draft a quarterback till at least the 3rd round, because they all normally get you the general amount of points of roughly 20. But you get your occasional guys who will go above and beyond. Like last year, you had Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson for the first half of the year. Excuse me, those guys will get you a lot of points. So my guy, who's a guy to look out for next year, who I think you can get as a steal probably at the later quarterback, is Ryan Tannehill. In the 10 games Ryan Tannehill started last year, he threw for 2,742 yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions with a 70.3% completion percentage, and led the league in quarterback rating at 117.5. And the highest QBR you can get is 158.3, and with an average of 22.42 fantasy points a game. If you adjust his statistics for over 16 games, he would have finished 2nd in the league in touchdowns with 35 and 6th in yards with 4,387. He just got a massive contract from Tennessee. It's 4 years. Was it 3 years? So 100-something million. It's
it was
big.
4.
It's a big payday, but a lot of people are saying this is a 1-year fluke and they're going to regret that. I disagree. He transformed it. You can't claim it was all Derrick Henry when that same Derrick Henry couldn't get 4 yards to carry and was 2-4 with another quarterback. Ryan Tannehill comes and he's the most efficient quarterback in the NFL. So I think Ryan Tannehill's the guy you're going to be able to get late, as guys like Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers will get your early quarterbacks that are going to go early. So I think you can easily get a guy like Ryan Tannehill on like your 5th or 6th round, and I think that'll be an extremely good value.
Well, I think Ryan Tannehill's always shown like spots of brilliance, and
he got Adam Gase.
Yeah, like he's always shown himself to be a good quarterback, and I think a lot of people sell him short for sure. And I think these stats that he put up last year are only proof that he can hold up under pressure. You know, playing a game against the New England Patriots and winning it. I mean, that's hard to do, right?
Well, he also
under 100 yards in that game.
Yeah, but he also threw a touchdown. I mean, like, you can say that, Greg, but also let's put it back to the Patriots have the best secondary in the league.
That got carried by Derrick Henry, and for a lot of the playoff games that
it's
was
a
true, but
1-2 punch.
The regular season that he really shined for me.
Because you have to look at Derrick Henry's stats with Mariota were 3.5 yards per carry. An awful yards per game average. Like, I think it was like under 50 yards per game.
You owned Ryan Tannehill in fantasy
late in the year. Best decision I made,
and you were making more points per game than me with Patrick Mahomes by far.
Tannehill,
far and away. And that was obviously them load managing Patrick Mahomes into the playoffs, but still,
I picked up Tannehill when Russell Wilson started to mellow out and the Seahawks started to play kind of shitty, and it saved my season and pretty near put me into the finals, considering how much of a crapshoot my fucking season was. So Tannehill, when he was in Miami, he had his 10 other offensive players were the local McDonald's staff, so guy got shit on even though he had no talent around him. So I think next year in Tennessee with AJ Brown in his second year, Derrick Henry on a franchise tag now has to fight for his job, so there's going to be a nice 1-2 punch there. I think, young talent at tight end, a solid offensive line that they'll likely address further in the draft if they don't go defense.
Yeah, they got to replace Jack.
I think it goes uphill for Ryan Tannehill playing 16 games instead of 10 for sure.
Yeah, well, my fantasy player was Josh Jacobs, the rookie running back from the Oakland Raiders. And I wasn't fortunate enough to have this guy in fantasy. Jake, you had him, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's what Jake beat me by 1.1 points in the opening week of the season because Josh Jacobs went for a pointless 11-yard run in opening week, and I was absolutely pissed at the very end of the game. Anyway, this kid is straight up, he's special. You can't deny that. With the O-line that he had in Oakland, I mean, they're not horse shit, but they're not great. And in 13 games last year, he ran for 1,150 yards and 7 touchdowns, which is pretty insane considering that he missed 3 weeks of the season. Also, the Raiders, I mean, I'd assume they're going to go with a receiver in the first round. They really need the help there, right? I mean, I think their number one receiver right now is Tyrell Williams. I know they have Hunter Renfrow, people like that. But and they'll probably go O-line and address it to get some protection for Derek Carr. But Josh Jacobs, man, he's just I think he's a sleeper because he's, in my eyes, most definitely a top 5 fantasy running back. And I don't know if a whole lot of people view him as that. And everyone knows that running backs and wide receivers are the 2 most coveted positions in fantasy football. And if you play PPR. So I the efficiency of Josh Jacobs was extremely impressive to me. The one thing that I'd say about Josh Jacobs is the defensive fronts in the AFC West are pretty impressive. In Kansas City, you have Chris Jones, and you have Frank Clark, those guys. And Denver, you have Von Miller with Bradley Chubb. Now you have Jarrell Casey stacking up the middle. And you also have, you have Bosa, and you have Melvin Ingram, and all those guys. But, for a kid to go out there and put up over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns missing 3 games of the season in his rookie year, that to me that's super impressive.
I completely agree, Greg. He was a weapon for me. He was a weapon. Like when he was healthy, he would go in there and he would be one of my biggest point getters of the week. And I think it's also valuable to point out that even when Josh Jacobs did get hurt, I actually picked up DeAndre Washington, who's the second string in Oakland, and he was actually pretty useful for me too. I mean, obviously he's not on the level of Josh Jacobs, but like he got me, like I think he finished the year from what I see with like 3 touchdowns, 387 yards. I mean, it's not great, but it's like that's pretty good for a second string.
Yeah, and I know I've said it like a bunch of times, but like this guy was a rookie.
Yeah,
and I mean there is a chance that he goes through a sophomore slump, right? Just like every other player. But the way that he runs the ball and the way that he plays the game, I really don't see it happening. And I do think he's a top 5 running back in fantasy because you have those top tier guys like you have C-Mac, of course, and you have Saquon and Zeke, but he's right up there, dude.
Oh, I completely agree. Like
100%.
Josh Jacobs is definitely going to be a top pick in fantasy drafts next year. I don't care what you say.
Oh, for sure. Like your first overall pick's likely going to be C-Mac. C-Mac and Derrick Henry will likely go 1 and 2. 3 will be Michael Thomas if you're in PPR because it's ridiculous. PPR.
Michael Thomas lit up for me this year.
His reception count is ridiculous. Saquon, I think, and Zeke will go 4 and 5. But then your 5 to 10 range is where you get guys like Dalvin Cook, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, like those kind of guys. I think will slide easily into that 5 to 10 pick range.
Yeah.
Like if I had to pick Josh Jacobs where I picked AB last year, I would have been in good shape.
You would have picked a lot of people where you picked AB last year.
I'd be in better shape. Like someone probably would have picked AB and I wouldn't have, and like, well, I would have been in better shape. I would have
picked AB.
Yeah, Saquon was a dicey pick in the end.
And then once he got dealt to New England, I was like, oh my God, you cannot be kidding me. This is the best. This is the best situation ever. And then one game and he's gone. Like what?
I think what kind
of luck was that?
My best draft was Russell Wilson in the 60s or George Kittle. Because Keenan Allen shit himself. He had a good 3 weeks, but George Kittle was my top pick that performed the most. That and Aaron Jones was a steal.
I thought I was so set drafting Le'Veon at 8 and Michael Thomas at 9.
Better than I think it was our friend Drake who took Todd Gurley at like 6.
Mm-hmm.
That was rough.
Yeah, well, I mean, Michael Thomas kind of made up for my shitty Le'Veon pick, but at the same time, like if Le'Veon would have played to his potential,
maybe he'd stop focusing on his fucking rap career. Our fantasy league next year, I think, is gonna be wild because we got a few more boys who are gonna add into it. Make it a 12-man.
I've been playing fantasy football for a while now.
Probably change it to head-to-head too.
Yeah,
because head-to-head makes it so like you can't just get like 2 guys who get you like 60 points a game and win. It's more balanced.
Yeah, and like that's what I always played head-to-head. Last year was the very first year that I'd ever played.
I normally do, but I realized because we had guys, some of our friends had never done fantasy football, and I said it's far easier to do just points against points than head-to-head.
Yeah.
To teach them, we can definitely move to head-to-head.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess Jake, you probably want to move. We should probably move into the our other new segment, the weekly rundown.
Yeah. So with the weekly rundown, this is like our news. This is like our InfoWars
reporting live from the plastic table in my basement.
So pretty much, like I said earlier, this is going to be like our condensed version of the news topics that we previously discussed in episodes and stuff like that. I think it just packs it up really nicely for a discussion rather than just relaying information and stuff like that. The first one I want to talk about is obviously the documentary that dropped last night as of the recording on Sunday, The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary. But does the documentary about Jordan's legacy actually hurt or help what he did, what people view of him? Because I've been getting a lot of mixed opinions, because some people are saying the fact that he approved the doc when Cleveland was having like the Cavs were having their championship parade and stuff, and LeBron won his chip and all that, it kind of is revealing in a way that says maybe Jordan felt threatened by LeBron in a way. I don't know. There's a lot of discussion online about it. I just want to see what you guys thought about it.
Well, honestly, if Michael Jordan on the Wizards couldn't hurt Michael Jordan's legacy, I don't think anything can. Just gonna say it.
Yeah.
That or his failed baseball career.
I mean, the man did steal like 33 bases or something in baseball, so that's pretty sick. But other than that, yeah, he had like a 222 average.
Like, no. I don't know, like
he did hit a home run. I remember I seen the clip of the home run.
People are gonna come out and like, because they, they mention like the cocaine and that kind of stuff. And people are gonna be like, oh, that's gonna hurt his legacy. Man, everybody was doing cocaine like back then. Like Lawrence Taylor was going into football games rocked out of his mind on coke.
Yeah. I certainly don't think Michael Jordan was sniffing lines before he went out to play the Jazz. Like,
no. You know who I think this hurts reputation more than anything? Scottie Pippen's agent. Scottie Pippen's agent, if he's not already dead, is like going to be on a manhunt. 7 years, $18 million.
I haven't actually watched this thing. I haven't actually watched it because I don't have ESPN channel or whatever it was aired on, so I'm pretty much waiting for like a bootleg copy of this to pop up somewhere online so I can get my hands on it.
Yeah, Scottie Pippen's contract was 7 years, $18 million. That is awful.
Yeah,
that's he got paid less than Luke Longley, man.
That's less than $3 million a year. I mean,
that's criminal.
Granted, that's like inflation was a little different back then, but it wasn't like that different, man, for 7 year, $18 million.
But when you're looking at it, he was the 122nd highest paid player in the league. And he was like a top 20 player.
I don't know if this was in the documentary or I just saw this on Bleacher Report, but I saw a thing that they were looking at trading Scottie Pippen and drafting Tracy McGrady, and apparently Jordan like went to the Bills and said like, fuck you, don't do it.
Yeah, well, honestly, that would have been the dumbest goddamn thing. They were the perfect combination for each other, man. Like,
very true.
They complement each other so well, and Michael Jordan and Tracy McGrady do not go well together at all.
I don't think it would have been. Not that Tracy McGrady's a bad ball player; he's an extremely good ball player.
Extremely good ball player, but they both play the same position. And frankly, McGrady needs the ball in his hands to be effective. So
true. Yeah, Scottie and MJ. I don't think anything, unless it comes out that like he O.J. Simpson somebody or like killed somebody. Right. I don't think anything can hurt his legacy. That or like if he committed some horrendous crime, like he might have dabbled in a bit of drugs, or he might have felt threatened by LeBron. I don't think that hurts his legacy at all.
Drugs, I guarantee it.
Everybody, they still do.
Exactly. Michael Jordan was a notorious gambler. Everyone knows that he was a notorious gambler. That's why the league. That's kind of why the league forced him to retire. They didn't force him to retire, but come on, man.
I mean, at least he didn't Pete Rose it and gamble on himself. Well, he might have. We don't know.
If anything, this is a good doc for Patrick Ewing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's shedding a lot of light on the fact that he just carried a Knicks team to actual like a good
legitimacy
standing in the league, and everybody clowns on him for not getting a ring, but like look what he had to work with, boys. Like it's ridiculous.
I don't think
Patrick Ewing's a beast.
I certainly don't think that this documentary hurts his legacy. I mean, the fact
I just think there's a lot of discussion online, like it reignites the whole Bron family and shit. Like,
here's the thing, man. Like the whole him, like giving it the green light during the Cavs championship parade. Like to me, that's not selling out. To me, that's kind of baller.
It kind of is badass. It's like
it's so badass.
Okay.
It's like he was sitting on this, and he knew he had it as like ammunition. LeBron finally, like the one thing that he's ever actually wanted to do in his career, he finally achieved it. And then Jordan's just like, okay, my turn. Like just absolutely
like Dr. Evil.
What I hope this does is like sheds light on like, so we can get other documentaries on like players. Like they don't even have to be like Michael Jordan status in the Bulls, but like I would love a documentary on like the Florida Gators at the time when they had Aaron Hernandez, Tim Tebow, Cam Newton. Like so they had like so many NFL players on their roster at one time.
They had the Florida State Penitentiary in their locker room, bro.
I think that would be like those kind of documentaries that are like intriguing. Not the Aaron Hernandez killer one because I was just like, hey, he's gay and he killed people. But like sports documentaries are so interesting when they're done right. But like when they're done wrong, they suck.
Yeah, you really have to hit a real. There has to be a driving point to the whole documentary.
You could do a documentary on Bob Jones, the backup catcher for the Baltimore Orioles in 1942, and if it's run well, I will fucking watch it.
Have you boys ever watched Last Chance U on Netflix?
I haven't really watched it, but apparently, isn't it good?
It's insanely good. The first 2 seasons are insanely good, and they're like
what's it about, man?
Well, basically, what it's about is a JUCO college football team, and they're known for having like kids with troubled pasts, but most of the kids on the team have, like, some of them have had offers from universities taken away because they committed some sort of crime or their grades weren't good enough to go to Division I schools. And basically it's like an NBA G League in a sense, but for college. It's like if you want to go to a cheap place but don't have enough money, like if you don't have don't have enough money to go to D2, and it's basically about everything about the program, the coaches, the town.
I might give that a try, actually.
Yeah, I might too.
I highly recommend it. I watched it like when I was in high school. It's like decently old. And
honestly, been on there for a while.
The only reason I brought that up is because I wanted to use it as an example, because I think there are 4 seasons. I only watched the first 3, but the first 2 are incredibly well done. And I think that's what makes it so interesting, is because when you like you said, Nigel, when you have a sports documentary, there's such a fine line on going overboard, like the Aaron Hernandez one did, with useless information that doesn't really affect the player or his the legacy. Like, I couldn't give 3 shits that Aaron Hernandez was gay. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, the in season 3, that documentary just went to shit because a new production team was assigned to it, and it was just basically the same story, but like, why would I watch it when it's just bullshit? You know what I mean?
Well, that's like NFL Network used to it. I think they still do A Football Life, and like some of those episodes are really well done, and some of them aren't.
Well, like actually, it's funny.
They did one on Sean Taylor that's really well done, like really, really well done. But then they've done others. Like the one on Steve Smith, I think is hot shit. But at the same time, I like the one on Charles Woodson. I think is also done really well.
The one on Marcus Dupree is incredibly well done. The fact that he was like #1 recruit coming out of college, and now he's driving a transport truck for a living. Anyway, it's really well done.
They also did one on Lyle Alzado that I thought was really well done, because Lyle Alzado was like the first NFL player to really get like chastised and caught for doing steroids, and that's because he did like, at one point they literally thought he was doing enough steroids that they could actually kill an animal, and like now he's like unable to walk. I don't know if he's dead. I think he might be. But like, he literally did enough steroids that he pretty much paralyzed himself in his old age.
Jesus.
Yeah.
But it's like so well done, and it's so interesting.
Yeah. The point of this tangent is that if a sports documentary is done well, then it's worth watching.
It sounds like the Last Dance is one of those documentaries. As much criticism as it brings up from the LeBron camp, I think it's like it sounds really good. Like the whole internet's blown up about it.
Twitter was a firestorm last night, from like Barstool Big Cat to Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah. The next topic actually is the NFL draft.
Wednesday.
Thursday?
Yes. Thursday.
No, isn't it Wednesday?
It's Thursday.
I thought it was Wednesday. I swore.
Nigel gets the beers going and looks up to the live chat on Wednesday night. He's just sitting there.
I'll be all alone.
We shouldn't even have told him.
It's Thursday. I'm an idiot. Anyway.
We should have went along with it, Greg. We should have let Nigel get absolutely tanked for this thing.
He would have been like,
just sit there waiting for it.
He would have been hammered and texting the group chat. Yo, where the fuck's Pat McAfee and AJ Hawk? I'm pissed. Where's Aaron Rodgers, man?
Okay, if you don't watch that watch along, you're crazy. That is going to be the best. Pat McAfee's draft announcement last year was gold. So if I
just missed a golden opportunity here.
You did.
I know,
you did.
Would not have questioned it. You would not.
I feel like I don't plan on getting loaded, but I feel like I would have sat there for like 15 minutes and be like,
no, the longer you sat there, you would have been.
No, but I'm not like
gas by the
I don't intend on getting intoxicated.
I can see the text of the group chat, man. What's going on? What the hell?
Like I don't intend on being intoxicated Thursday night.
But you're gonna be.
You're gonna be.
Well, I'd have to go buy another case of beer for that, but that can always happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be a lot to talk about next week, obviously.
For sure.
That'll be like the main.
I think we could probably dedicate the whole podcast to that.
Probably do some other stuff, so we're not just rambling about football.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so we got the next topic on here. Andrei Markov retiring. 10 games short of 1,000 games. The renowned Russian hangs up his skates. Even though we could return to play here,
I don't think we
sometime
will
this year.
Like I think
they're going to try, man.
Close. I think it's going to like you start the playoffs in July. What the fuck are you going to do? Like,
well, you're gonna finish the playoffs, Nudge.
But like, no, but I mean, like, like, what are you gonna do?
If
with,
they
like,
start them, they're gonna finish them. Like I know it seems like really out of the picture right now, but I feel like they're gonna try and do something before the next season.
They either have to even out the game totals and go with what teams are going to be in the playoffs at like 68 games, or include more teams. But when you start including more teams, you'd have to go to the point where you'd basically have to include everybody but the Detroit Red Wings because they're the only team mathematically eliminated.
Well, I think you're going to have to include teams that were like relatively close, and then everybody else.
But what does that do with comp picks? Because say
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because if Vancouver made the playoffs,
they should just tax the year.
Like we would get three.
That's what I was saying.
We would get 3 first rounders if Vancouver made the playoffs. So like, I don't know how that would work with a comp pick there. The Devils would. When I say we.
I mean, I'd like to see the playoffs just for the fact that it would be something to do.
Playoff hockey is so good.
And it's good. It's good hockey. I'd obviously love to see Ovechkin contend for another cup because God knows how many times they're going to be able to now that he's getting older. But like, I don't know, man. I just feel like this season, no matter who wins it, like I've said before, in any sport, whoever wins like an adjusted season, adjusted championship, it's going to have an asterisk beside it. Like.
Well, man,
like, there's just no way to do it right.
The Raptors won the championship last year, and they have a big old asterisk next to their names because LeBron wasn't in their conference. Clay and KD got hurt, man. Like it's almost like it's inevitable nowadays, man. People always they're constantly finding excuses.
That just comes with social media, though. Like there's so many opinions online that don't need to be shared. Like I hate to say it, but like some people just shouldn't have a phone. Like I hate to be that guy to be like, oh my God, you should have a phone, you shouldn't have a phone, but like some people just can't talk online. Like I don't give a.
Can we just talk about how Andrei Markov constantly caused the Canadian national team like shit?
Like this is the thing I had in the notes. Like he was
Kovalchuk, dude.
He couldn't stay healthy long enough to play a complete season, but when it came time for national level hockey, holy Christ Almighty, this guy could shell the Canadian team single-handedly.
Always won like defensive all-star for like every world championship, every Olympics, man. Like that guy. You boys remember when Canada put that absolute thrashing to Russia in the Olympics? I think
yes.
Was it 2010 or 2014?
Probably both.
I think it was 2014.
I think it was 2014. But Markov is the only guy that looked half competent, and he literally like
because in 2014 Russia got booted out of their own Olympic tournament.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like the thing about Russian players I find is that like since a lot of them go back to the KHL and stuff, they show up way more in national level hockey than they do in the actual NHL. Like someone like Alexander Semin or Sergei Fedorov or Markov or something could be like decent for a couple of years. Like Fedorov's a different case because he was a great player for like his whole career, and in the dying days of his career when he was in Washington and stuff, he was still good. But when it came time to play national level hockey, like that guy would play his heart out, and he'd actually like do way better than if he was playing in the NHL. Like
Maxim Afinogenov.
The World Championships in the Olympics. Yes, I do.
Oh, he always Buffalo, played well. Yeah, he always played well in international play.
Well, there's literally like a whole list of players like
Datsyuk.
What's Alex Frolov used to play on LA, and he was great in the Olympics for the Russians. Like
Datsyuk,
and he was just an average
Radulov.
player. Yeah. Like there's some players can actually like make it in the NHL, but like Ilya Kovalchuk's a great example of a player that just didn't have the career he wanted to have in the NHL for whatever reason. Goes back to the KHL for a few years. But every time you see him in national like level competition, he's scoring like 2 goals a game, maybe an assist thrown in there if he's lucky because he doesn't pass the puck to save his life. Like he is playing good hockey when it comes to national level stuff, and then when he comes back and plays on the Devils, he just shits the bed.
I remember in the late 2000s, the IIHF World Hockey Championship, Canada Russia 4-4 overtime. Kovalchuk skates in and absolutely rips a goer, beats Luongo. Man, I cried. I cried. I was so upset.
I'll never forgive that man. What he did to the
I was a hater. I was a big hater. I'm gonna admit I hated the guy. Comes to the Capitals, scores like maybe 3 points collectively, and I love him now. I don't know why.
Like, my favorite thing,
he has that effect, like when he doesn't completely screw your team like he did to New Jersey.
When he came to Montreal, like when Montreal played, they won in New Jersey in a shootout, and like Kovalchuk went like to shush the crowd, and like TSM was like, Kovalchuk shushes the crowd, and like everybody's like, nah, they just kept booing. Anytime he was on the ice, I've never seen a like group of fans unite to boo somebody like they did Ilya Kovalchuk that night. Like you could hear it on like I was watching the game, and you could hear like over the announcers. All you could hear is like the whole like arena just booing Ilya Kovalchuk.
One thing you wanted to talk about, Nige, was Andrei Markov underrated? I think he kind of was. He was always a workhorse in Montreal.
He wasn't like he's one of those guys. He wasn't like your flashy box score guy, but like if you watched him play, you knew he was a good hockey player.
And given he hasn't played in the NHL for a couple of years now because he went back to Russia, but I think he's always been underrated, even by Habs fans. Like he's not a name you talk about often if you're a Habs fan. You're talking about like Plekanec, you're talking about like those kind of players that have played there and may not play there now, but Markov was on the team with Plekanec. I don't even know some of these other
Subban. Wouldn't he have been on? Was he?
Subban, yeah, he would have played with Subban. He would have played with what's his face playing in Vegas right now.
Pacioretty.
Max Pacioretty.
Just don't talk about Markov and all those players, and I think Markov is one of the best ones.
Yeah, man, I think Markov's constant injuries and traveling back and forth from the KHL really put a damper on his legacy.
Yeah, really well, for sure. Like he's one of these exceptions that went to the KHL a couple times, came back and like came out fine. But it seems like when young players do it, and I know one of our topics also on here is Mikhail Grigorenko just signed a contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets and is returning from the KHL. Failed prospect, but given he's only 25 years old. So when young players do that, go back to the KHL and then come back to the NHL on like a 1 or 2 year contract, it never usually works out. But Markov seemed to be the exception to that rule because he could come back and actually make something of himself when he did.
Yeah, I think his game translated as well, though.
Yeah.
He was always
he
clutch.
was also a defenseman, so he wasn't really like a...
Yeah.
He was a solid defenseman who could produce on the power play and could move the puck, and I think that's all you could really ask out of...
The Blue Jackets are in such a weird place. Like, they played way over their potential this year.
The Blue Jackets?
Considering they lost Artemi, they lost Panarin.
Bobrovsky.
Yeah, even though Bobrovsky played like hot shit this year.
I don't know why you keep saying that, Nige. He played great in CBJ. Like,
no, but I mean, like,
he played great for the.
I mean, in Florida.
I know, but like,
that's what I said this year, in Florida.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
You're almost saying it as like a despite him playing.
No, but I'm like saying like this year, like I don't know if it was a bad thing that they lost him because if his career declined, he's getting paid a lot of money in Florida.
I've said it before. Like we talked about it really early in the podcast, like episode 1 or 2 or something about this. I think it's an adjustment thing, man. Like once he gets into his rhythm next year, I think he'll be fine. Like how old is Bobrovsky anyway? Like late 20s.
Goalies are such a weird 30. Thing.
I think he'll bounce back from it.
Yeah, man, I think he'll be fine. Honestly, to play like he did in Columbus. There's like obvious talent in there.
But now they've got Merzlikins, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Elvis was really great this year. I just don't know how Grigorenko really fits into the whole picture in CBJ because like he was a bust. He only had what do I have here? He has 64 points in 217 NHL games between his tenure with Buffalo and Colorado. So he went back for 3 years to the KHL, put up great numbers. He's getting like 64 points a year in the KHL, and now he decides to come back for a 1 year with Columbus. Are the Blue Jackets really the best fit for him?
I don't think it's necessarily a bad pick, dude. Like, the guy's 6'2", he's a pretty big boy. He proved that if he was in the right system that he could put pucks in that. I mean, when he came into the league playing for when he got drafted by Buffalo, right?
Yeah.
And that was an utter shit show. The system that he was dropped into was horse shit. And then he got moved to Colorado, and we're not talking present day Avalanche. We're talking like Nathan McKinnon being elite. This kid,
like Gabe Landeskog was the only good player on their team back then.
Yeah, and so he's literally never been in a good system in the NHL.
That's a true point to make.
And he's never been coached by a decent, like, developing head coach, right? Like when he was drafted to Buffalo, I believe that Dan Bylsma was the head coach. And I like I like Dan Bylsma. That's solely because he was with the Penguins when they won those 2 cups, and everyone thought he was a great coach. But like newsflash, you won because you had Crosby and Malkin and Letang, and your team was ridiculously stacked. You didn't win because you were a good coach. And they shipped this guy off to Buffalo with a horse shit roster, added this poor motherfucker onto the team, and he was just kind of Seward. And like I can remember him playing, I believe, it was either the Quebec Ramparts or the Rimouski Oceanic. I cannot remember what it was. The Ramparts. Yeah, it was the Ramparts because Patrick Waugh was his coach. And when this guy played in the World Juniors against Canada, he absolutely ripped them to shreds.
Yeah, I remember him being a top prospect. Like he was highly touted.
When you're a foreign hockey player, like coming from Russia, played a couple years in the queue, being the superstar that you were, that you really didn't need talent surrounding you, and you get thrown into a system like Buffalo, like when he was thrown there, dude, you're bound to fail.
Like, well, nothing swims in Buffalo. Like I don't care if you're Jack Eichel. Like even Jack Eichel's not performing to his
if Jack Eichel got thrown into a better system, we'd be talking him the top 5-10 player in the league.
Yeah,
but like that's the point I wanted to make was like
you're completely right.
Bad for the kid.
I just don't know how he fits in with like Columbus, because I'm looking at Columbus's roster right now. They have Emil Bemstrom, who's a center. Brandon Dubinsky is a center. Pierre-Luc Dubois, center. Nathan Gerb, center. Boone Jenner, center. Ryan McInnes, center. Stefan Matteau, center. Riley Nash, center. Gustav Nyquist, center. And Grigorenko himself is a center. They have a lot of centers playing wings as second positions.
It's kind of
it's weird.
I don't know what they're gonna do, but I mean, obviously they see something.
Well, it's definitely the potential.
It's a big prove it deal.
It's a really cheap deal, and it's actually a really good deal. 1.2 mil for 1 year. That is like really, really good for the potential they could have. 52
points in 55 games in the KHL.
I just don't know. Like you were saying, Greg, like the playing style of someone like Andrei Markov translated really well.
I don't know
back to the NHL, but Grigorenko, he's putting up like good points in the KHL. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to check that right now.
52 points in 55 games last year.
That's all.
There you go. Does that translate back to the NHL? That's the discussion.
I think it's worth it, dude. I don't dislike the deal at all. 1 year, $1.2 million.
I love the amount of money they're paying him.
Because even if it doesn't work out, you're not even you're not out anything.
He was number 12 from the Buffalo Sabres in the 2012 draft. So that's a number 12 pick for 1.2 mil for 1 year. That's good.
I'll take that on a prove it deal.
That's a steal.
100%.
And he won a gold medal in 2018 with that unnamed Russian team. Remember?
Yeah, I'm gonna put the biggest goddamn asterisk next to that, man. The 2018 Olympics was when, like, I think Canada
wasn't putting their top players in.
I literally think Canada's best player was Rene Bourque, or what's his face? Oh my God, that dumb son.
Germany was in the finals. I remember that.
Yeah, like that's so
dumb.
Oh man.
God, I didn't watch it. Like I couldn't watch a goddamn.
It was kind of fun hockey to watch though, because it was so amateur, except for the Russian team.
The
Russian team was absolutely stacked.
The Russian team were like
AHL was just loading it.
All players that could literally play.
Was like marching them to the bus and saying, "Get on or die."
I think the highest point getter, that Canadian team was the biggest excuse to Canadians.
Well, it's like the Spangler Cup team.
Oh God, no!
Spangler Cup team. But the difference
not that atrocious.
That's different because that's the level of.
We actually win at the Spangler Cup with 40-year-olds.
Yeah, because they're all former.
Got mowed down by a bunch of 19-year-old Russians from,
you boys want to know the highest scoring player on Canada's team was fucking Rob Klinkhammer.
Who? Klinkhammer? Who the fuck?
Oh, he was the Penguins' healthy scratch, man. He's a cup champion.
A Penguins' healthy scratch. Imagine their best point.
Grigorenko on the Russians bloating the net, and then we have Klinkhammer on Canada.
That sounds like a toy you give your kid.
Stacked. The boys were stacked. Woltic, Wolski, Derek Roy.
Oh my fuck.
Mason Raven. The boys were playing some.
I swear, Klinkhammer is just a toy you give a kid. It's a children's toy. Like one of those fake tool. It's one of those fake tool sets. I feel like.
Like, I really
Here's
don't
your
know
clean camera. Now fuck off.
Like, Canada literally could have just sent their World Junior team, and they probably
That's what the discussion was at the time. They wanted to send the World Juniors, did they not?
I don't know, man.
But the junior teams wouldn't send them or something. I don't know.
Well, I kind of understand that.
They send their Spangler Cup team, and we got burned.
My boy Chris D'Domenico out here sniping.
Jeez. The Spangler Cup team was drinking beer and sitting on a beach in Maui. They get a call. You guys are playing in the 2018 Seoul Olympics or whatever the fuck they were called.
Pyeongchang. And then you're like, oh, shit, we can't drink beer for another 2 months before the Spangler Cup. The boys are out here all weighing 270 pounds.
The odds of them halfway
got mowed.
The odds halfway through a shift in the Olympics, one of the guys was like, I need dart break. Where's me smokes?
Yeah, they're at the smokers pit behind the rink.
I remember the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics. That was going on right when I was I was going to the gym when those were happening, and how at Good Life, they have TVs on the wall, and you can plug into the into their thing, get the Bluetooth and whatever.
Probably.
Well, they played a game and they beat Slovenia 5-4.
Slovenia.
And Rene Borg had a hat trick in the game, and he comes in. And it's the first game that I remember this like it was yesterday because I was running on the thing and thinking to myself holy Christ, this guy, the question, Kate Burness from TSN looked this man dead in the fucking eyes and was like, so what have you been doing since you retired from the NHL?
Smoking, drinking, pouring down food.
It showed his It showed his career dates, and it's retired in 2014.
That's rough.
Starting right winger. Oh my god.
Okay.
I think the best part about it though is that the Russian team was running around with numbers on the front of their jerseys because they had no. They were the unnamed, unmarked Russian team.
Yeah, they were athletes from Russia. They weren't allowed to call Russia.
Their medal count name was Olympic athletes from Russia.
Yeah, because they couldn't call themselves Russia.
They were literally those troops that invaded Crimea when Putin was go take Crimea. They didn't have flags on their shoulders.
They were just all in black with riot shields.
So I think we only have one more topic on the rundown.
Chinese baseball.
Yes, the Chinese Professional Baseball League returned, and they completed the start of the season with a bench clear.
Hell yeah!
That never happens in Chinese professional baseball. Apparently, I have no idea.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Dave. I was gonna say I don't know what happens in Chinese professional baseball.
But according to the announcers on the clip I watched, it never happens. And there was this. It should be noted that it was a non-native pitcher who just came into the league. I think he used to pitch for maybe the Cardinals or something. I forget his name. And he was throwing ball inside, barely missing this guy every pitch he threw. And this guy's looking back at the ump saying, what the hell is this guy throwing at me? He's trying to get me killed out here. And then he pointed his bat at the catcher, and the catcher got right pissed off. He was getting in his face. He was like, listen, man, I'm not throwing these pitches, man. I'm just calling them. And then you could see the gears working in the pitcher's mind. He was looking at this guy pointing the bat at his catcher. He was like, okay, this one's actually going to hit this time. This one's going to land. This is not going to be a walk. And he gets the ball, throws it right into his back, and the guy just he looks at the batter like, what did you expect? I was trying to hit you the whole time. It's ridiculous.
I know we shouldn't like bench clearing in sport, but sometimes it's fucking funny.
It fires me up. It's funny though
because the arena's empty because of social distancing, and then they have a huddle of players coming towards each other and like getting in each other's faces. It's like defeats the whole purpose.
Social
Can you imagine if like CC Sabathia's Yankees had a bench clearing ball with Jason Varitek's Red Sox?
CC Sabathia, I want to see that guy fight.
No one
in the flat out just deck a man, like knock a man
with
cold.
no one in the stadium and all you can hear is them chirping each other, man. That'd be like some like NRA.
Well, with what CC puts on Twitter, CC would definitely say something that would get him removed from the league.
Oh yeah, but you can't tell me that
Well, he
Jason
got suspended
Varitek's
before,
redneck
like-
ass wouldn't as well.
Oh, CC would probably come close to murdering a man, like with one punch.
Man, CC's just
A baller.
my kind of player.
CC was my favorite Yankee for so long.
There's some pitchers that choose to hit batters with pitches that I'm like, oh my god, man, like you're such a petty piece of shit.
When
Like,
CC does
why
it,
did you have
oh, yeah,
yeah, like when CC did it, he was like, this
it's for my boy.
this is a work of art. This fastball is dedicated to you.
This is the
And it's gonna have
Michelangelo
a point behind it.
of pitches.
I can't wait for CC to come out of retirement one game to face Alex Bregman and Jose.
Altuve is going to get a
What are we
pitch
talking
that
about,
hits him so hard that will lift him off the fucking ground.
Man, they're such pussies, dude. They definitely just rest them that day.
But I swear to God, if you watch the clip of that game that CC got suspended for against the Rays,
That pitch is beautiful.
he was oh man, he was riled up. When who was it on the Rays? It was a reliever, I think, hit one of the Yankees with a baseball that was way inside, and CC, you could see him coming, like rising out of the dugout, like, oh my god, they did not just do that. They did not just do that. He was about to step on the field, and then Aaron Boone's like, okay, sit down, buddy.
Amber, you're a savage on the plate.
Your time's gonna come. Your time's gonna come. And then the first pitch, CC steps on the mound next inning. Boom.
Right
And
at
the
him.
umpire's just like,
Comes
God,
out of
get
the
the hell out of
dugout
here.
like the Undertaker comes out of his coffin.
CC
Whack.
pointed at the Rays dugout and said, "This one's for you."
What I love about it too is like CC was like the umpire didn't even have to tell CC to leave. He walked off. He threw the pitch and just walked off the mound. He knew it.
No, it was clearly it was clearly payback because the batter just walked to first base and CC knew he was getting thrown out and pointed to the Rays dugout and said, "That one's for you" or something like that.
Oh,
my
now you make me.
God,
Not,
so
I miss
bad.
CC so much. He's put off a bunch of weight, eh?
Oh yeah,
Super off
he has his own
topic, but-
podcast too now. It's what's it called? It's like the shit, I forget what it's called. He has his own podcast too now. I've actually listened to it a couple times. It's pretty good.
Hey, CC Sabathia, I know you're not going to hear this, but come on our podcast. No,
Yeah, you're falling on deaf ears there.
yeah, it's fine. Can't say I didn't try now.
Do you guys want to move into our debate topic?
Probably should.
So last week we said our debate topic for this week is the best players we think, the three best players. I guess we chose three each, right?
Yeah.
Three best players each to never win a championship. So I think all of us have pretty much chosen three different sports. I think, yeah. So for them, I think is Greg.
Greg took two football players.
Greg took two football players. Yeah, that's doesn't even matter. But you want to go first, Nige?
Yeah, so my first player it's a sin, man. Larry Fitzgerald, like, guy's second in catches, arguably the best hands to ever play at the wide receiver position. Nicest human being to ever be on a football field, yet will tear your team apart. Like, I respected Larry Fitzgerald so much because every time Arizona played Green Bay, that guy would go for like 200 yards and just slice. He slice and dice. Like, and it's such a sin that the guy who's second in reception and has more career tackles than drops. That guy's dropped 30 balls over his entire 16-year career. The fact that he doesn't have a ring is fucking awful. I feel so.
That's ridiculous.
That's so nuts, man.
He carried that, when Kurt Warner was old as fuck and they made that Super Bowl. That was literally just Larry.
Oh, 100%.
The second player I have is Right fielder for the Chicago Cubs, well, not anymore, but was Sammy Sosa. Another stud of a baseball player. 1,667 RBIs, a 273 career batting average, 609 home runs, 2,048 hits, no rings. Absolutely none. It's such a sin. Sammy was so good, man.
I used to have a Sammy Sosa shirt, I think.
Sammy Sosa, another stud, shame. The last guy, a big Canadian stud. We were talking about Team Canada earlier. A guy used to ball out for Team Canada when hockey players played in the Olympics. Jarome Iginla.
Fed Crosby on the golden goal.
Yeah, the last guy that's never won mainly because he was with Calgary. And then when he went to Pens, they didn't win. But when he was with Calgary, he carried that Flames team for so long.
The Cavaliers Lightning beat them in the finals once, didn't they?
Yeah, that was that. Was it? I think it was 04. I think it was the 04.
I thought it was like 07 or 06.
I don't know. I just know Iginla deserved a ring and he didn't get one for sure. Those are my three.
Yeah.
I'll go my next. Three. My three are
Go ahead.
Henrik Lundqvist. Everybody knows this guy as the king of goaltending. And this guy lost to that flash in the pan LA Kings team in the mid 2010s. I think it was 2012, 2013.
2012 and 2014 were their two cup runs because 2012 was when they played the Devils in the No, they didn't play it was 2014 because 2012 was the Devils final.
Yes. The LA Kings won in 2014
and 2012.
And
I have bad memories.
But specifically the 2014, I believe, was when they scored that triple overtime goal against the King. It's kind of confusing. The King scored against the King.
King Henry.
They scored it on Henrik and won the Stanley Cup against the New York Rangers. And you could see Henrik dying inside. He lied down as any goalie would during the situation. But I think it was especially crippling for Henrik because at that point, I think he knew, holy shit, I may never win a cup in my career. I watched that clip a few different times in my life, and every single time, I just feel bad for the Rangers. I'm not a really big LA Kings fan at all, but
I just know when King Henry and Brodeur played, that rivalry between the Rangers and the Devils was alive and going.
That was a booming.
I loved those games.
They had a good team in the early 2010s,
They
too.
did. King Henry was a stud.
And my next player, Baller, mentioned him earlier in this podcast, actually. And the one, not the one, but very few players ever stick out in a person's mind that have ever played on the Knicks. And it should go without saying that Patrick Ewing is one of the best players to ever play the game of basketball who never won a ring. He was carrying that Knicks team.
He was even better in college.
Yeah.
Him at Georgetown was straight up beast. He's so underrated, dude.
I know nobody ever thinks of Ewing. And he, in my mind, a lot of Zion reminds me of Ewing just because he's so built, he's so bulky. Ewing was a steamroller on the court. Yeah. And I watch clips of Ewing. I never grew up watching Ewing, obviously, because he was before our time. But
Jake out here being 45 years old.
Man, some of his he drives to the net like nobody. I just wish we had that kind of stature on our team now. The Knicks suck.
I think you should
wish you had any confident player.
What's that?
You wish you had any confident player right now.
Well, obviously, Jesus. If Chris Tapps walked into New York tomorrow and said, I'm ready to come back and play for 3 games, I'd be like, sure.
I'll
pay $5 million for that.
And I'll sign Pingus for $5 million.
Pingus, man. The Knicks are pretty much the Detroit Lions of the NBA.
Motherfucker doesn't even have a green card.
We're going to go to another factory of sadness, as Nigel likes to call them, in my last player here. I agree, Nigel. Sammy Sosa was a great baseball player, and I could have chosen a bunch of different baseball players for this one. I was actually thinking of Ted Williams.
Ty Cobb as well.
Ty Cobb, yeah. Ted Williams, though, he played his whole career with the Red Sox, won 0 World Championships, World Series with that team, and only appeared in the World Series once. And this was in a career where he went and fought in the Korean War and World War II.
Damn,
I mean,
man.
the least you could do for this guy is give him a World Series, for Christ's sake. The World Series that he did appear in, he only batted .200. So
some people argue that Ken Griffey is one of the, if not the best baseball player to ever play. That is an argument.
Like I was saying, Ken Griffey Jr., the kid, Seattle does not have a World Series championship to their name. They are the ones with 0 World Series appearances. The only
They're kind
team
of the dumpster fire of the MLB.
And the only team in the MLB to never appear in a World Series. It blows my mind that they had someone like Ken Griffey Jr. come and pass them by without utilizing that to their fullest extent, because even teams like the Marlins, for God's sake, they have World Series championships to their names. Like, they've had good teams in the past, teams that you might not think of. The Baltimore Orioles have World Series teams back in the 70s and early 80s, I'm pretty sure. Like, surely to God, a team that housed Ken Griffey Jr. can get there. It's not happening, obviously. I don't know how, but Ken Griffey Jr., give that man a ring.
True.
Yeah. Well, this is so shitty. Anyway, my 3 guys, well, I'll start off with the Miami Dolphins quarterback, Dan Marino. He had an opportunity. Let's just say that. And it was lost on him.
They failed to give that man any help.
Yeah, they really did. And he was the first player to ever throw over 5,000 yards.
Marino was so good.
He was like a pure quarterback. He's like a prototypical, if you were to build a quarterback back then, not now, but if you were to build a quarterback in a lab, you would take a lot of characteristics from Dan Marino. And if Dan Marino has multiple championships, man, his GOAT status climbs a lot. You know what I mean?
I mean, he was right in the time frame that Miami could have had multiple championships too, though. Like,
and he saved the Ace Ventura.
It's a crying shame.
Ace Ventura. Man, I remember when Rodgers got drafted, they all said he had the arm of Dan Marino. But he was like, if Dan Marino could move, they said that was who Aaron Rodgers was.
Right, and it's true, man.
Like, Marino was so good.
My second player / duo, I'm going to count them as one because they really were one in my opinion, was John Stockton and Karl Malone.
True. I was definitely going to choose Karl Malone if I didn't choose Ewing.
If those two guys were so unlucky to continuously run into Jordan and Pippen and Rodman, literally back to back. You got to feel for the guys.
The thing I find about the Jordan era in basketball is that there's so many players that just flew under the radar because Jordan was lighting their whole team up on, numerous occasions throughout the whole year. Like, when you analyze all these different teams that played against Jordan and were getting shelled by Jordan himself, you look at the players in some of these teams, like, if they weren't playing against Jordan multiple times a year, like, they would have been less depressed and way better basketball players. And they were still great basketball players too. Yeah,
the combination of Stockton and Malone just worked, and it was really unfortunate that they always ran into those mid-'90s Bulls teams, like literally some of the greatest basketball teams to ever play the game. And they would take them to 6 and 7 games. And then,
exactly,
of course, late in his career, Karl Malone went to the Lakers and fell short again, which sucks. Anyway, my third is
agree.
Yeah, my third is Mr. Randy Moss. The guy had the shot with the 18-0 Patriots, and Mr. David Tyree and Mario Manningham and Eli Manning ruined Randy Moss's chances at a Super Bowl.
Big time.
And you know what? He is one of the greatest receivers to ever play the game. In my eyes, he's top 3. In my opinion, he's top 3, top 5. And to have his career in Minnesota and build a legacy, and then go to New England
Broke
with
records.
broke so many records. To go to New England with a prime Tom Brady and in my opinion, the greatest coach of all time, and to go 18-0 and let's face it, lose in an unlucky situation where a unknown guy caught the ball on his helmet.
Yeah,
gotta kind of feel for him.
Oh, completely. I don't know what it is about football players that, like, I didn't even include one in my best players to never win at all, but it seems like football players get shafted the most out of any sport for whatever reason.
Well, like you can look at
career length is way shorter.
Like I was thinking of Barry Sanders, Megatron never won one.
Well, here's my opinion, boys. Like when you look at hockey and you look at basketball, you really can carry your team to the championship. LeBron and Jordan have carried teams to the championship. Kobe's carried teams to the championship. And I think that's why in basketball there are a lot less people who are great legends who haven't won. I mean, like there are less, like basically all the legends to ever play.
There's a lot more tragic injuries in football.
Yeah, and not even that, man. Football is such a team game. Like, but Nige, you brought up a really good point when I was talking about Dan Marino. Yeah, that guy was an absolute stud, throwing for over 5,000 yards, but his defense was horseshit.
Well, look at best example I can pick as a Packers fan was like prime Aaron Rodgers was completely wasted carrying some of the worst defenses into the league, and we have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, and I think that's why so many legends in the game of football don't win championships, is because they can only do so much, right? Like, you could say that Patrick Mahomes carried the Chiefs to a championship this year. You could make an argument for it.
You've got Honey Badger and Jones.
Their defense balled out when they had to.
Frank Clark. Then you have Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. They have a solid O-line and Eric Fisher. And
in football, it's always the team that wins the championship.
I think that's
why.
The sport of football and the sport of baseball are the two hardest sports to actually form a team. Like, if you get drafted to the Detroit Lions like Barry Sanders and there's nobody around you, you're screwed.
Well, you also look at like baseball, because baseball, your starting pitchers can be good, but if your relievers suck, then you're not going to win games. You can hit a million home. You can hit like 10 runs a game, but if you don't have the defense, then you're going to lose. Or the pitching to stop them from scoring, you're going to lose. Like baseball and football are two teams that need like. Because like if you look at when like Marty Brodeur won his cups, outside of a few good defensemen, you cannot name like an offensive superstar from the 95 to 03 Devils. Like, you can name a few defensive guys like Scotty Stevens and Niedermeyer, but you don't have any, like, superstars throwing pucks in the net constantly or...
Here's an example. Baseball, you need batting average guys, you need power guys, you need guys that can do both to form a competent batting lineup. But in hockey, if you have Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin or back in the day, Jonathan Taylor, Patrick Kane, or Nathan McKinnon, McDavid, if you have any of those guys on your team, you're going to compete if you have a competent coach and goalie.
Yeah.
Right?
Very true.
Well, I mean, that's why Ken Griffey Jr. just didn't get to where he wanted to be. Like,
he put up 50 to 60 home runs a year, and the guy hitting the second most on his team was hitting 15.
Pretty much.
Can't win that way.
And the pitchers just couldn't pitch to save their lives. So even if, Ken Griffey was hitting so much a game and he was putting a insane production at the plate, the pitchers just can't keep up with it. Like, there's two facets to the game of baseball.
Yeah,
and I think that's really true in the game of football too. I mean, there's defense and offense. There's two different teams playing.
Can't do anything with it. Can't do anything with an extremely talented quarterback or running back if you have no O-line to protect them.
Exactly. It's a team. It's fully team sport.
One guy needs 8 other guys to be great so he can succeed in football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely. Damn, I think that just about wrapped it up. I think we
what are we at
ended
here?
on a good note there. Yeah. You want me to wrap it up then?
Yep.
That's all for this week. Next week's debate topic will be, when is it the right time to call a player a bust? I think that's really applicable to some of the discussions we've been having, especially this chat actually about Mikhail Grigorenko and stuff like that. So it'll be definitely an interesting topic to talk about. Follow our social media at BRBL Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and subscribe to the Backroom Beer League YouTube channel. Thanks for listening, everyone.